Welcome to Wind Down Wednesday. Here are your hosts, Jeffrey Tobias Halter and Amanda Hammett.
Well, good afternoon. Today it's my pleasure to come back and talk again with Jeanette Thebeau about their amazing allyship in action report and benchmark study. I'm Jeffrey Tobias Halter, and today I'm enjoying a nice Cab Franc from Chateau Saint Michel up in Washington. Amanda, what's your beverage of choice today?
I'm doing the warm and cozy again today. I've got some hot tea. I still have some work to do after we get done with this conversation. I have some West Coast clients that probably would not appreciate me drinking on the job. I don't know. But it is my honor today to welcome Jeanette Thebeau back to Wind Down Wednesday. We actually spoke with her very recently in a prior episode about her work at Integrating Women Leaders Foundation and their very recent allyship report. So for those of you who missed last episode, please go back and listen to it again. But Jeanette serves as the Chief Acceleration Officer and the Chief of Staff at Integrating Women Leaders Foundation, or otherwise known as IWL. Prior to joining IWL, she worked with a broad range of corporations and high potential startups and founded workshops and workbook series like Act Like X. Jeanette holds a master's from Northwestern, and she is a popular event speaker and guest lecturer at universities throughout the United States.
Jeanette, welcome back to Wind Down Wednesday. What's your beverage of choice today?
Thanks, Jeff. I'm excited to be here. Today, I am doing a Bogle Vineyards Chardonnay vintage 2014, and I am drinking this in another one of the IWL wine glasses. So I'm showing off our collection today. This was also from the 2020 conference.
I have to throw up a flag here. I don't have one of those. I have an orange one, but I do not have one of them. I wasn't obviously working with you closely at that point.
Well, you have one in the closet. Shoot me an email and we'll take care of you. We'll get you a keep calm and rise on wine glass. In fact, we'll send them to both of you, and you can showcase them on future shows.
Excellent.
Love it. We will take you up on that. All right. So Jeanette, for our listeners who missed the earlier episode, I would love if you could just share a very short, brief background and description of the work that you're doing at Integrating Women Leaders Foundation.
Sure. So IWL is a 501c3 founded a little over a dozen years ago. Our mission is to accelerate the advancement of all women to drive individual and organizational growth and impact. And the way we do that is through programming throughout the year. We have events, we have workshops, we do trainings, we work with Jeff here at Why Women, and we really bring men into the conversation. So this is a collaboration between men and women to try to move the needle and make a difference in terms of gender parity. So this is an organization that collaborates, that is for all genders and all subject matter experts who want to be a partner with us. We take it all in and hopefully do some good work in the process.
That's great. We want to continue our conversation. On our last show, and again, if you didn't get to listen to it, please go back. It's number one, it's foundational, but it's so full of data to take back to your company. And we're continuing a discussion about the Allyship in Action benchmark study that IWL did and sharing men's perspectives and women's perspectives. And, if I have to generalize a key takeaway, men are saying, things are kind of okay. I'm doing a good job. And women are saying, yeah, no, you're not. And this is such critical data to share with your organizations. And so today we're going to take a deeper dive into some of those questions. We're going to look more into a whole host of areas, but then we're also going to talk about women and women of color. So we'll talk about that for a moment. Jeanette, talk about what your thoughtware was and just some of the top findings, because I know we're going to go deeper on why white women and women of color in your study.
Right. So this was our first year, the benchmark study, and we wanted to, as we said, I think in the prior segment, really get men's perspectives. But we did do several data cuts to try to understand not only what women in general were seeing, but as you mentioned, white women versus women of color. And, the truth is that all women see microaggressions happening a lot more often than men. They see lack of allyship much more often than men. But women of color have this, almost double situation, right? These are intersectional women where not only are they maybe the only woman in the room, but they might be a double only. They might be the only Black woman or Asian woman or Latina woman in the room. And so they see things even a little bit more discerningly than the white women do, not only in terms of allyship, what's happening, what's not, but also microaggressions. I think that's where we want to go today, right, Jeff? Talking about what's happening in corporate America today, what's happening in the workplace that we need to try to solve for, and the things that men maybe don't see at all.
Yeah, well, why don't we just dive in right now to some of these microaggressions? I mean, let's talk about the two most common microaggressions that women face.
Right. Well, so we wanted to know what those common microaggressions were. So we asked a question in the research, based on your experience or what you've observed, how often do you believe these things happen to women within your organization? And we asked 12 different microaggressions. So we really wanted to understand what's rising to the top. We also asked, how often do you believe these things have happened to you within the past year? And, maybe this is a good time to stop for a second and just identify or define what a microaggression is for those who are, familiar with the word, but not exactly sure what it means. Microaggressions are these, subtle, often unconscious messages that devalue, discourage, and impair workplace performance. And so that word unconscious is really key, because a lot of the times the microaggressor doesn't even know that they're doing this particular behavior. And that's one of the things that our work is trying to bring to the forefront, is helping people to be aware of what's going on, and then to try to change the behaviors. So of those 12 statements, the two that we saw really rising to the top were being interrupted or spoken over. So we asked, how often is this happening? And how often is it happening to women? And then, has it happened to you? So in terms of men, they see women always or frequently being interrupted or spoken over 13% of the time. So both white women and women of color said, yeah, it's happening 46% of the time. Wow. So that's a very big difference. When we asked, is this something that's happened to you personally? 10% of the men said, yeah, I've been interrupted or spoken over. Now, keep in mind, they said 13% of the time this is happening to women, 10% of the time it's happening to them. So white men, women, and women of color said 30% and 37% happened to them personally in the past year. So you can really see how these variances in perceptions start to build up and create what we call death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? I mean, that's microaggressions. They're little paper cuts. One hurts, but when you get them over and over and over, it's really kind of crushing. The second microaggression that sort of rose to the top was having their judgment questioned in their area of expertise. So when we asked this question, men said they believe this happens to women in their organization always or frequently 12% of the time. White women said 33% of the time, and women of color said 39% of the time. So they're feeling it even more than the white women. Now, when we asked, has this happened to you within the past year? Again, we get sort of a similar trend with the men. Yeah, 8% of the men said, yeah, I had my judgment questioned in my area of expertise. So they think it happens to women 12% of the time, happens to them 8% of the time. The white women and women of color said it happens to them 25 and 28% of the time. So you really see this trend, and this is across multiple microaggressions. It's pretty fascinating, really. And what's cool about this study, again, just going out and asking for the men's perspectives, is that there isn't any other data out there like this. And so it's really interesting. And for a lot of people, it might just confirm or validate what they already, believe to be true. But it's always good to actually see it in data, I think.
There's 10 other microaggressions that we could talk about, but there's one I want to go back and highlight, and that's around office housework. Because not only were the numbers surprising, but you also found a unique disparity through qualitative research among women and women of color. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So that statement was, how often do you believe this is happening to women in your organization? And the statement was being asked to do the office work, scheduling meetings, taking notes, things like that. So the men said they think it's happening always or frequently 11% of the time. White women said 43% of the time, and women of color said 31% of the time. And that was the first indication that we saw that women of color were not at least matching the white women on that percentage of always or frequently. And in most cases, they're higher. And we were really sort of unsure, what's going on here. And to be candid, I'm a white woman, our CEO is a white woman, and we're sitting here looking at the data and trying to figure it out, and decided that, maybe it's better if we just go talk to some women of color and see if they can give us some insight. It was our hypothesis that maybe the women of color weren't even in the room to be asked to do the office work. But what we were told when we started talking to different women of color is that their feeling is that this number showed up because they're not even trusted to do the office work, that they're in the room to begin with, but the men will trust the white women to take notes and schedule meetings, but they won't trust the women of color to do it. And so that was pretty crushing. Again, that's as you said, Jeff, that's qualitative data, but who would know better than these women?
Absolutely.
I'm kind of speechless at this moment. Yes. Okay. That was okay. So Jeanette, as we wrap up and we're looking at all of this data, this is a lot. This is a lot of data, and it's fantastic stuff. And I encourage everyone to read through this and look at what does this actually mean for your organization. But if the listeners today were to take one, maybe two concrete actions as an ally, what could they do today, or what could they do this week?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a couple more than two, only because a big part of this is understanding where you are on your allyship journey. And so those actions sort of depend on where you are. I would say for everyone, start where you are and, take an assessment to see where you are if you're not sure. And Jeff and Why Women created a fantastic profile that IWL has adapted. We've added a few more statements to it and changed up the continuum a little bit. But either one of these assessments will give you a good idea of where you are on the continuum. You can take the Why Women assessment at whywomen.com. You can take the IWL assessment at iwlallin.org. And I encourage everyone to come back and take that every 6 months to see what your progress looks like. So first, start where you are. I think for anyone, regardless of where you are on the journey, and Jeff will speak to this too, ask questions and educate yourself and listen to learn. He does an amazing job of talking about having a conversation with a woman or a woman of color or any underrepresented group, and asking questions multiple times, right? What is your experience like? If you don't get an answer the first time, ask it a second time. And Jeff, I know I'm taking words out of your mouth, right? And if you don't get an answer the second time, ask it a third time, because for a lot of these people you're asking the question to, this is new for them, that anyone really wants to know about their experience. And they might be a little hesitant at first to share. So listen to learn. But then I would say, if you think back to the last segment where we talked about men not calling out other men for devaluing behavior, this is one of the hardest things to do. Men find it a lot easier to, advocate for a woman to be promoted than to call out another man, especially in the moment. And so we're trying to make that easier. We're trying to make it less personal. It doesn't have to be personal, right? There's a way to do this without shaming the offender. If the microaggression is that someone was interrupted, you can say, hey, I'd really like to hear what Alicia had to say. Can we let her finish her thought? If it's an idea that's being contributed from a male, everyone loves this idea, but a woman just said it a couple of minutes ago. You can certainly say, hey, Bob, that's awesome. I don't know if everybody heard a few minutes ago, but Kelly had the same idea. This is great. So there are ways to do this without shaming anyone, making anyone feel bad. And one of the things that IWL has created as part of our allyship summit we just held this past September was a little call it out flag. These are flags you can get for everyone on your team, whether it's an in-person meeting or a virtual meeting. You can kind of wave the flag and say, hey, you know what? I just saw a behavior. Let's just kind of stop and try to make it not personal. I think probably the other thing that we can do is bring others into the allyship practice. Bring people along with you. And one thing we're encouraging everyone to do is just have more conversations. So we created a deck of discussion starters. They're great for a 5-minute conversation to open a team meeting, a weekly team meeting, maybe. And we're excited that these are providing people with an opportunity to just start to make this top of mind. So that's a lot. That's not one or two things. That's more than a few, but there are more than a few actions that people can take. And you need to take the action that's right for you, right?
Yeah.
But take some action and start where you are.
Well, Jeanette, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for this amazing research. A couple follow-up items for all of our listeners. Number one, please download this research study and then talk about it in your group. That would be a great first step to building more allyship. The next one, and this is something that Jeanette just mentioned, is the all-in allyship discussion starters. And I actually have a set of these, and I use these in my training. It's 52 conversation starters. 52. Oh gosh, that's a year. So share the benchmark study at your next staff meeting, and then just do one card every week for the next year during a lunch and learn. And I'm just going to take a minute and share, and they're broken into different categories, but here's a typical general allyship card. The data shows 13% of men report believing women are interrupted more often than others in the organization, always or frequently, compared to 46% of women believing so. Then the next point is simply discuss. Why is such a disparity between men and women important? How does this microaggression play itself out in your organization? This is really simple stuff. Read the report and then talk about it once a week, and you're going to start to engage more men. And we don't want to leave you hanging. IWL also has a do. Pay attention when you see this happening in your organization. Tabulate how many times women are interrupted in meetings versus men. If you're a leader, if you're a team leader, I just want you to keep a tally sheet. And every time you see this occur, just put a little check mark. And if you don't believe us, if you don't believe Amanda, if you don't believe Jeanette, keep your own data. And you're going to find it's absolutely true happening in your organization. So I am 100%. Such a huge proponent of this study and the work of IWL. You'll find more information about Jeanette and the work of integrating Women Leaders Foundation at www.iwlfoundation.org. Jeanette, thank you, number one, for undertaking this work, but also for reaching out and sharing some time with us to share this data. So I'm having a Wind Down Wednesday, and Amanda, cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to you. Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us for Wind Down Wednesdays, a contemporary midweek discussion on current workplace and marketplace issues with a focus on diversity, inclusion, intersectionality, and equality. I'm Amanda Hammett, and on behalf of myself and Jeffrey Tobias Halter, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for joining us for Wind Down Wednesday. If you like this episode, please subscribe to receive more episodes straight to your inbox.